According to Amnesty International, at least 304 people were killed in a matter of days. The order to suppress the uprising passed through layers of institutions. But at the top of every one of those chains sat a single man, a man whose formal title, in Persian, translates roughly as a sign of God, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And yet, some would say it is a religious rank, some would say it is a government title. All of those answers contain something true. None of them is complete. It is the gap between understanding Iran and misreading it entirely. This documentary is about that gap. And why, inside Iran today, that title is also the site of one of the most dangerous political conflicts on earth. A conflict between clerics who support the system and clerics who are imprisoned by it. Let's start with what most people think they know, and why it is not wrong exactly, but badly incomplete. A synonym, essentially, for the Islamic Republic. If you saw the word before 1979, you probably did not see it often. Ayatollah Khomeini, Ayatollah Khamenei. The word started to feel like a job title in a government, like a rank in a military hierarchy. It is also misleading in ways that matter enormously, because the title of Ayatollah predates the Islamic Republic by several centuries, specifically Twelver Shi'i Islam, which is the branch of Islam practiced by roughly 90% of Iranians and by significant populations in Iraq, Lebanon, Bahrain, and elsewhere. And within that tradition, the title is not assigned by a government. It emerges from a process that is, in some ways, more like the recognition of expertise in an ancient guild than anything resembling a modern political appointment. To understand this, you need to understand a little about how authority works in Twelver Shi'i Islam. In Sunni Islam, religious scholars, ulama. In Catholicism, authority flows through apostolic succession, through the Pope, through a hierarchy that is institutionally defined. Shi'i Islam occupies a different position. One it has lived with for over 1,000 years is the absence of the Imam. Descendants of Ali regarded as divinely guided, infallible, and the legitimate authorities of both religious and political life. The 12th Imam, according to this doctrine, did not die, a kind of hidden presence, and is believed to be alive, concealed, awaiting the moment of return. This is not a minor theological footnote. It is the organizing problem of Shia political thought. Who interprets the law? Who has the authority to issue rulings on matters the Quran and the traditions of the Prophet do not address explicitly? The jurists. The men who had devoted their lives to mastering Islamic law, theology, and philosophy in the great seminary cities. And this is where the word Ayatollah enters the story. In Arabic and Persian, the word literally means sign of God. It began appearing as a title for senior Shia scholars sometime in the 18th and 19th centuries, according to historical scholarship on the subject. It was not a rank you achieved by passing an exam. Informal, distributed, based on reputation. That a particular scholar had reached a level of learning and judgment sufficient for others to follow his religious rulings. From the Arabic root meaning reference or source. A marja is a source of emulation, a scholar so learned and trusted that ordinary Shia Muslims can choose to follow his religious rulings in their daily lives, paying him a religious tax, consulting his published guides to Islamic practice. A scholar reaches the rank of marja not by decree but by accumulation, of students who follow him, of peers who acknowledge him, of a reputation built over decades of writing, teaching, and judging. Below the rank of Grand Ayatollah, the highest tier, reserved for the most senior marja. Think of it loosely as a three-tier structure of religious seniority. But here is the thing that the common understanding misses. This hierarchy is not a chain of command. Scholars at every level have their own followers, their own students, their own published positions, and they often disagree, sometimes profoundly, with each other. The answer begins in 1979, but the intellectual groundwork was laid decades earlier by one man working at the margins of Shia jurisprudence. He was trained in the classical Shia scholarly tradition, studying in Qom, eventually reaching the rank of Ayatollah and later Grand Ayatollah. By the 1960s, he had become a vocal critic of the Pahlavi monarchy under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. During those years of exile, Khomeini developed and articulated a theory that had no real precedent in traditional Shia jurisprudence, velayat-e faqih, or the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. The core argument, as Khomeini elaborated in lectures delivered in Najaf in 1970, was this: in the absence of the hidden imam, the governance of Muslim society should fall to the most qualified Islamic jurist. Not just religious guidance. The jurist should be the ruler. This was controversial within Shia scholarly circles. Many senior Ayatollahs, including some of the most respected figures at the Najaf seminary in Iraq, rejected the theory outright. Their position, which can be described as quietism, held that senior clerics should guide the faithful on religious matters, but should not seek to hold direct political power. To fuse the two was to risk corrupting both. Khomeini's theory was a direct challenge to that tradition. A revolution driven by many forces, secular and religious, Khomeini emerged as its dominant figure, and his theory became the constitutional architecture of the new state. At the apex of the system sits the supreme leader, the Wali-e-Faqih. Below him, an elected president and parliament operate within the space the system permits. The institutions that filter who can run for office are composed largely of clerics appointed by or loyal to the supreme leader. Here's what this means for the title of Ayatollah. In the Islamic Republic, the title exists in two registers simultaneously: a recognition of scholarly achievement in an ancient tradition, granted informally by peers and followers, independent of the state. On the other register, the state has constructed its own hierarchy in which clerical rank and political power are fused, and where loyalty to the principle of velayat-e-faqih is itself a kind of political credential. The tension between those two registers is not academic. It is the lived reality of Iranian politics. He was Khomeini's designated successor, literally the heir apparent to the role of supreme leader. By the late 1980s, Montazeri had grown increasingly critical of abuses carried out under the Islamic Republic. In particular, the mass executions of political prisoners in 1988, a documented event whose scale and brutality he publicly condemned. He died in 2009, having been, in the view of many scholars, the most learned Shia jurist in Iran, and having spent much of his final 2 decades as a prisoner of the state he helped create. He is widely regarded as the most influential Shia scholar alive, a marja with millions of followers across the Shia world. He has never endorsed velayat-e-faqih. He does not recognize the political authority of the Iranian supreme leader in matters of governance. His influence in Iraq is enormous and well documented, but it operates on principles that are, in fundamental ways, a rejection of the system Tehran has built. They represent a genuine and ongoing theological disagreement within Shi'i Islam, one that has political consequences every time the question of succession to Khamenei comes up, every time an election in Iran is held, every time the Islamic Republic must decide how far its authority extends. Which brings us to Ali Khamenei himself, and to a detail that Western coverage has often noted but rarely explained fully. The Constitution required that the supreme leader be a Grand Ayatollah, the highest tier of Shia scholarship. He held the rank of Hojjatul Islam, a respected title, but 2 tiers below Grand Ayatollah. What happened next illustrates precisely the tension at the heart of this story. The assembly of experts selected Khamenei anyway. The Constitution was amended, removing the explicit requirement that the leader be a Grand Ayatollah. In the traditional scholarly system, this promotion was not widely recognized. Senior clerics in Qom and Najaf did not suddenly begin treating Khamenei as a Grand Ayatollah in the scholarly sense. The title in the state context was real. In the scholarly context, many considered it asserted rather than earned. It means that the man who has held supreme authority in Iran for over 3 decades, who controls its nuclear program, its foreign policy, its military, that is an extraordinary situation. And it has produced an extraordinary dynamic, a state whose founding principle is clerical governance, which has, in practice, consistently suppressed, sidelined, or imprisoned the most independent and most learned members of the clerical class. The list of clerics who have faced harassment, house arrest, or imprisonment by the Islamic Republic is not short. Montazeri. More recently, figures associated with the reform movement who have used their clerical credentials to criticize the system from within. The pattern, as documented by human rights organizations and Iranian press accounts, is consistent. The clerics who are protected and elevated by the state are those who endorse and sustain it. Even from within the religious tradition the state claims to represent, face consequences. Because the question of what comes after Khamenei, who is in his 80s and whose health has been the subject of persistent speculation in Iranian media and among analysts, a successor to Khamenei must, under the current constitution, be selected by the Assembly of Experts. That body is itself composed of clerics who have been vetted by the Guardian Council. The system is, in that sense, self-sealing. But the theological legitimacy of whoever is chosen will depend on something the state cannot simply legislate: whether that person is recognized by the broader Shia scholarly world as genuinely qualified. If the next supreme leader's clerical credentials are again asserted rather than earned, if senior Ayatollahs in Qom and Najaf decline to recognize him as a genuine marja, that is the structural vulnerability built into a state that claims to govern in the name of Islamic jurisprudence, while simultaneously controlling what that jurisprudence is permitted to say. The title of Ayatollah, in other words, is not just a label. What is confirmed by the historical record? The title has pre-revolutionary scholarly origins. It was adapted and partially co-opted by the Islamic Republic's constitutional framework. Key figures, including Montazeri and Sistani, have contested both the title's application and the political system it underpins. And Khamenei's own elevation was a political rather than scholarly process. What remains, contested or unclear? The precise timing and mechanism of future succession, the degree to which Qom's senior scholars would challenge a new supreme leader's credentials openly, and whether any reform within the clerical system is possible without structural change in the political one. When you watch coverage of Iran in the years ahead, the protests, the negotiations, the elections filtered through a Guardian Council, the question of nuclear policy and regional strategy, not as a descriptor of a faceless theocracy, but as a live dispute between men who earned the same title by different means, who draw very different conclusions from the same tradition, and who understand their relationship to political power in ways that are, at their root, irreconcilable. A sign of God, 2,000 years of Shia jurisprudence. One constitution, one disputed succession still to come. In Iran today, it is more complicated and more consequential. If you want to understand what happens next, this is where to start.